Well, hey, folks, this is Bob Ferguson, and today I'm in my role as positive intelligence coach. I bumped into positive intelligence and I liked it so much that I decided I'd become certified to help people through it in my own sales organization and other wonderful people like my guest today. So with me, I've got Carrie LaJeunesse, Dr. Carrie LaJeunesse, and I'm going to first ask her to recount a little bit of her background because her background is really astonishing. And ask a few questions about how positive intelligence has impacted her life, what's different about it, and all that. So, Carrie, thanks so much for being with me today.
So my background is sort of threefold parallel career paths. One in organizational leadership and development, one in medicine, largely veterinary medicine, but I can explain a little bit more about how that's expanded over time. And then also in the social and behavioral sciences, primarily in the area of thanatology, so end of life, death, dying, and bereavement, and then psycho-emotional support for helping professionals, caregiving professionals, so first responders, doctors, dentists, people that are on the front lines providing services in rural communities, that sort of thing. And it sounds kind of all different, but it actually ties in very nicely together. And it's taken me everywhere from practicing veterinary medicine to the presidency of our state veterinary medical association to serving as a science and technology policy fellow in the U.S. Congress for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, to working on COVID and Ebola at fairly high levels, and doing a lot of social welfare and community and human rights and diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So sounds all over the map, but it's really all connected, and at least in my head. And usually on my projects. So
you even left a couple of things out when they had the devastating fires in Northern California. They brought teams in to work with them. You were, I believe.
Right. So I do disaster preparedness planning and response. So local responses in Washington State and California, and then internationally on very large Department of Defense, multinational programs in Africa and around Oceania and the Southern Command. So from very local project leadership in communities affected in the US, all the way to huge planning missions at government levels for the US government, working with other countries as well.
So safe to say you've been around the block and you've done a lot of development work on yourself, a lot of formal education, and a lot of inner development work. And you have also, you also present a lot of that. You coach people, you mentor people, you work with people in a variety of ways. So I guess my first question is, when I first proposed positive intelligence to you, first of all, what went through your mind? And then what was it that got you interested to go through the program? And then I'll ask you a couple of questions about what's happened for you. What were you thinking of when you first heard about it?
Well, the first thing is, Bob, it came from you. And you don't reach out to me very often with things that, I mean, you're really selective about what you recommend, and I've always found value in what you've recommended, so that was part of it. But the other thing is, you had introduced me to Shirzad Shamin's work back in, I think, 2017, something like that. So I read the book. In fact, when I started this program, I pulled the book out and there's like bookmarks and underlinings and little sticky tabs all over it. And I actually had written to him to ask him if he'd be willing to present at a conference, and he personally wrote back and said, yeah, I'd consider that. So I'm guessing he doesn't answer his own emails anymore, but he did back then. So I was already familiar with the work and had recommended it during my trainings and corporate trainings and that I do and workshops. But this was different, and I'm aware that it takes about 40 days, so 6 weeks-ish, to shift habits. I was going to say break habits, but I will say shift habits. And I knew his work, and you gave me great previews of what that would look like. And it was good timing for me. I had, there's never a good time to do certain things like get married or have kids or buy a house or do the program. So I have learned over time that if it looks valuable, to make the time to do something like this. The benefit I got from the program far outweighed, and the time efficiency that I gained and the perspectives I gained on how to manage my life and my time far outweighed that initial 6-week, more intensive dedication of time. And that kind of surprised me. I didn't expect that. So that was a nice surprise.
Well, that's really terrific. So why don't we, because the purpose of these interviews It's just to help everyone, but particularly other professionals who operate at a fairly high level, to understand that this is a little bit different, that it's very practical. We just tick down a few of the elements that you feel were most important to you and that you would recommend the program to others for those reasons.
So one of the things for me, it was sort of like hitting a reset button, and I'll explain a little bit about that. So one of the things that I've always struggled with, and more so after 5 head injuries, I don't recommend doing that, by the way, is some higher executive function. So I've always had difficulty organizing, looking at a group of papers across different areas of my life or subjects that I'm working on, and trying to organize those. And I found that a couple of things happened. One, it became easier to sort through that and prioritize. And two, the sort of judgment and shame and guilt I had around not having everything together all the time. Really, I won't say it disappeared, but I'm going to say it diminished to the point that when it pops up now, I'm like, oh, there you go, trying to guilt me again. And that makes it worse, right? So guilt and anxiety, or guilt and shame and judgment and all that, for me also instigates a level of anxiety that then puts me more sort of in my lizard reactive, oh my gosh, I'm in danger brain, rather than in my higher cerebral thought way of being that allows me to actually get things done. And so some of that is, I think, the gentleness that came with this program, just recognizing that we all have these voices that are in constant judgment about ourselves and others and circumstances, and being able to recognize those and not ignore things, but really just step back and say, what are the facts and what's the story I'm making up, and understanding the basis for why we're making up those stories and what we can do about it, so that we can just pop back into reality and be present with what's actually happening. And sort of as a result of that, you know, as I've gotten older, there's that sort of adage that as you get older, time goes a lot faster, and that's been my experience. But with this, it was actually kind of strange. I felt like time was expanding, like days were longer, hours were longer, and days, and not necessarily that I was getting more accomplished, but what I was doing was more satisfying. And I think if there was any message I wanted to give to people, there's going to be so many benefits, and I can go through some more. But the sense of pressure that people often experience in any life or line of work, and part of that is just society dictates to us through media and programming on television shows and such, how we should be. And I think there's just this gentleness that came as a result of this, a deeper extension of grace to myself and to other people, and to understand that circumstances are not always what I would like them to be, but that's part of life, and that's how we learn and how we grow. But in the process of observing my interactions with other people, circumstances, I was able to not fall, I'm not going to say it completely disappeared, but not fall as much into that place of angst and judgment and frustration, and that completely takes me off of what I was trying to do in a given period of time. So I found it easier to do whatever I was doing with fuller attention. You know, and I think that might be part of that sense of expansion of time. You know, when you're doing the thing and you're attending to it, you're not thinking about all of this other stuff. And sometimes that required me to consciously stop thinking about something else. But there was something about the program, the rewiring of these neural pathways. And that's what I love about it. You know, our brains are very plastic. You rewire those neural pathways. And if you keep working on practicing these easy little, you know, mechanisms, I'll call them, you can continue to grow that and to grow that rewiring. And especially after 5 brain traumas and getting older, that's really important to me. So I'm very grateful to you for this program.
Yeah, well, thank you, Carrie. And kind of a final question. I think a lot of people will hear this and they may hear it through, well, okay, Carrie feels better and it's softer and all that kind of stuff. How about the efficiency of life? How about the raw capacity to get things done?
I think I got more clarity on priorities. I do a lot of different things. So I got more clarity on priorities of what I want to do. And I think I got more clarity and more, I'll just call it backbone, about setting parameters around the work I would do, who I was going to work with, where I was going to work, the hours I was going to work, what I was going to ask to be paid. And so it gave me both clarity to sort through that and some sort of different perspective on my value and what I bring to the work that I do. And it also gave me a different perspective. I don't really know how to explain it, on areas that I can continue to grow. And I do a lot of personal and professional development. I have to by virtue of the people that I help and the work that I do. But it gave me an opportunity to sort of look at things differently. And part of that was, I know this sounds weird, following the dictates of my body. I think we don't listen to our physical body enough to tell us, is now a good time to just take a break? Taking a break can buy us more efficiency, more attention, more focus. And then I think the other thing is, and I wanted to emphasize this in this program, I think you benefit by doing everything that's recommended, but nothing was mandated that you have to do this. They want you to read the book, right, or listen to the book on tape. But everything was voluntary. And I think at the end of the program, it made sense to me because we're trying to not instigate those voices that are so judgmental all the time. So I don't know if that's the theory behind that, but that was really helpful to me to not have somebody else, as they say, shooting on me. You should do this. You have to do that. That felt, and as an adult, I really don't want that. I do that enough to myself. So I appreciated the invitation. And then the excitement about wanting to follow through on my own, even after the program's over, because of what I gained from it.
It's so beautiful. Well, Carrie, thank you very much. This is a great snapshot of one highly accomplished person's experience with positive intelligence. I really appreciate you being with me today.
I really enjoyed it, Bob. Thank you for having me.